Coming up, we have a primary election in just over 2 weeks. Have you made your plan to vote? One county here in Michigan is giving money to Planned Parenthood. I'll tell you which one. And having a therapist that understands your religion can make all the difference. We'll talk about all of this, plus your headlines and weather. From Ave Maria Radio, this is Michigan Mornings Saturday.
This is Michigan Morning Saturday on AM 990, Detroit, 105.5 FM Southfield, 107.9 FM Ann Arbor, AM 1390, Lansing, 105.7 FM Midland, AM 1440, Saginaw, and around the world at avemariaradio.net.
Good morning and happy Saturday. This one's the 18th of July and it's the memorial of St. Camillus de Lellis. I'm Matthew Handley. Welcome to the inaugural edition of Michigan Mornings Saturday. On this new program, we're going to be taking a look at some of the issues that matter most to us Catholics here in Michigan. We'll do that through conversation, commentary, and interviews, both from myself and from some of the other hosts here on Ave Maria Radio. We become better Catholics and better evangelists when we are familiar with what is going on around us. Ave Maria Radio is in its 30th year, and it's committed to keeping you connected to your faith and community, and this program is going to do just that. So thank you for joining me. I hope you'll enjoy, and of course, we start with the headlines. Health officials reportedly believe there may be a link between a fast food restaurant and the growing cyclosporiasis outbreak. NBC's Ann Thompson has more.
While the FDA is tracing the parasite back to multiple produce items and locations, the Washington Post reports federal and state officials are also investigating Taco Bell, the fast food chain voluntarily removing a number of ingredients at select restaurants.
In recent days, signs appeared at Detroit area Taco Bell restaurants notifying customers that the locations could not serve lettuce, cilantro, onions, pico de gallo, or guacamole because of a national recall. There are now almost 7,000 cases of the stomach bug across 34 states. The investigation reportedly involves both federal and state health officials. The FDA has not announced any recalls involving the Irvine, California-based Taco Bell. Wildfire smoke from Canada blanketed much of the state this week, and at one point, Detroit had the worst air quality in the world. That according to the Swiss organization IQ Air. Here's NBC's Stephanie Gosk.
Heat and smoke now descending on tens of millions of Americans. In Michigan, the Mackinac Bridge almost impossible to make out, drivers being told to slow down to 20 miles per hour, with murky skylines from Duluth, Minnesota to Detroit and New York City.
Dr. Nilu Tamala of NYU Langone Health says smoky air is a health hazard.
You are inhaling the particles, right? They're invisible particles, right? And so that's what makes air pollution so concerning.
It is tough to forecast where the smoke will go more than 48 hours ahead, but the National Weather Service says showers this afternoon could help clean the air. Congresswoman Haley Stevens is leading progressive Abdul El Sayed in Michigan's Senate Democratic primary race. According to the Detroit News WDIV-TV polling, 41.4% of respondents said they would definitely or probably back El Sayed, compared to 48.2% of respondents who said the same of Stevens. The two Democrats are battling for Senator Gary Peters' seat in the election scheduled for August 4th. Peters has recently endorsed Stevens, while El Sayed has support from key progressive lawmakers, including Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Michigan's new state budget is preserving key support for non-public schools, according to the Michigan Catholic Conference. The budget maintains $21 million in school safety funding, boosts non-public school meal funding to $2 million, and for the first time, opens state teacher fellowship and stipend programs to non-public school educators. The budget also continues funding for diaper assistance, foster care, and homeless youth programs run by Catholic charities agencies. Separately, MCC is urging voters to reject Proposal 1 this November, a measure that would trigger a state constitutional convention. The MCC worries the convention could invite unwanted out-of-state influence, especially in areas of social change. That new budget now awaits the governor's signature. A school district in West Michigan says it will no longer allow religious missionaries on campus after a pushback from the atheistic Freedom from Religion Foundation. According to that organization, missionaries from the Catholic Net Ministries have been allowed on the Fremont Middle School campus during the lunch hour to talk to students. The school had also apparently sent permission slips home to allow the Gideons to hand out Bibles to students. Fremont Public Schools has not commented on the report. The Freedom from Religion Foundation says they exist to promote the separation of church and state and alleges on their website that most scientific and moral developments in the West have come from atheists. Saline Township has voted to approve a tax cut for a giant data center project this week, but the cut is 9 times smaller than what was requested by the company. The 250-acre development is being built by the related companies for Oracle and OpenAI. As a result of the deal, the company will get a 50% tax break for the next 12 years. The township had tried to pull out of the deal, claiming the development was initially valued much lower than when they struck the deal, but Related sued, and a court ordered the township to stay with the deal. It comes as Governor Gretchen Whitmer is calling on data center companies to agree to the Michigan Affordability and Responsible Growth Pledge. That pledge would require their operations to not increase electric bills for residential and small business customers and use technologies to minimize water use. As the Society of St. Pius X, a group that was declared schismatic following illicit episcopal ordinations this month, continues its attempts to appeal its excommunication, bishops around the country are responding and instructing the Catholic faithful in their diocese. Bishop Jeffrey Walsh of the Diocese of Gaylord issued a statement expressly stating, quote, "Catholics are not permitted to participate in the sacramental life and ministries of the Society of St. Pius X or to receive sacraments from bishops and priests associated with the society. The only exception provided for it in canon law is in danger of death." In his statement, he also asks the faithful to continue to pray for the healing and reconciliation of the Church. The Society of Jesus, more commonly known as the Jesuits, is establishing a novitiate in Detroit beginning in 2028. The Detroit Catholic reports that the novitiate will be at Lansing Riley Hall, the existing Jesuit residence at the University of Detroit Mercy. It is expected to accommodate up to 30 novices and be ready for use by 2028. An additional new novitiate will be opening in Culver City, California. And in sports, being a franchise legend could not save Red Wings general manager Steve Yzerman, who was fired Wednesday after 7+ years on the job. The 61-year-old will be transitioned into a senior advisor role to team CEO Chris Ilitch, who will lead the search for a new general manager. Yzerman was hired in 2019 to help resurrect the franchise he starred with for 22 seasons. Instead, Detroit extended its postseason drought to 10 years. Let's take a look at the weather across the state. In Detroit, Saturday's high will reach 87 with scattered showers possible in the afternoon. Sunday turns mostly dry with a high of 79, and Monday stays dry with a high near 81. In Lansing today, we'll have a high of 86 with showers likely in the afternoon. Sunday clears up nicely, mostly dry with a high of 80, and early next week remains dry with a high of 81. In Saginaw, expect a Saturday high of 86 with scattered showers possible in the afternoon. Sunday turns mostly dry with a high of 80. Monday will stay dry with a high of 83. And if you're headed up north, today's high is 70 with isolated showers possible in the Marquette area. Sunday brings a slightly better chance of afternoon showers with a high of 76, and early next week sees isolated showers possible with a high of 84. I'm Matthew Handley. You're listening to Michigan Morning Saturday from Ave Maria Radio. Thank you for joining me on Michigan Morning Saturday. Today is July 18th. It's the memorial of St. Camillus de Lellis. Good morning. I'm Matthew Handley. The primary election here in Michigan is just over 2 weeks away, and depending on where you are in the state, you may have heard plenty or perhaps none about the candidates. Now, here on this program, I'm not making any endorsements, but rather I want to help you and I prepare for what's coming up on our ballot. As the U.S. bishops write in Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, every person and association has a right and a duty to participate actively in shaping society and to promote the well-being of all, especially the poor and vulnerable. Last week, Senate Democratic candidates Dr. Abdul El-Sayed and Representative Haley Stevens were on the Wood TV debate stage to talk about their plan to represent Michigan in the U.S. Senate. Here are each of the candidates' closing statements in full.
We just celebrated our 250th anniversary. I know what my life would have been without the opportunity to be born here. I saw that firsthand in summers in Egypt. I know what America can do for somebody. I also knew that 15 miles away, there were kids who never got that same opportunity. We have to build an America that can be what it was for me, for all of her kids. And that means we've got to take on the ways that corporate greed have gotten in the way. We need to stand with working people, stand with unions. We need to take on oligopolies and billionaires. We need to guarantee health care through Medicare for all. Across my time touring this state, town hall after town hall, you could be in a church in Detroit, you can be in a living room in Lansing, a VFW hall in Escanaba. People say the same things. It just shouldn't be this hard. Shouldn't be this hard to afford your groceries. Shouldn't be this hard to pay your rent. Shouldn't be this hard to see a doctor in the richest, most powerful country in the world. And that means we've got to build a movement of people to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket and pass Medicare for all. I hope that you'll join us in building that movement. It's the many versus the money.
I am fed up and fired up. I am fed up with Michiganders getting screwed over by bad policies that are coming down from the Trump administration that do not understand the first thing about us and that are raising our costs and impacting our way of life and coming for our jobs. I am fired up, though, to be your next U.S. Senator. I am fired up to lead for us on day one and when it matters and to be in this fight alongside you and your families. All 83 counties in this incredible state of ours, the largest state geographically east of the Mississippi, deserves its workhorse. And that is me. That is why I am on this campaign trail, listening to you, hearing you, and leading in that order. That is my ethos. That is why I am running. Let's go beat Mike Rogers, send him back to Florida a second time, and make sure that Michigan shines at the lawmaking table.
Again, that's Dr. Abdul El-Sayed and Representative Haley Stevens, both vying for the Democratic nomination for Senate here in this state. Ms. Stevens portraying herself throughout that debate as the establishment Democrat, and Dr. El-Sayed saying he's the progressive outsider. That's not the only race going on. Also last week, the Republican candidates for governor were on the debate stage, including former Attorney General Mike Cox, Perry Johnson, a businessman, and Representative John James.
We need to restore Michigan, and I'm the best up here to do that because I'm focused on you. I'm focusing on the things that will help restore Michigan by restoring hope, by restoring wellness, by restoring trust, by restoring beauty, and by restoring family. We are bought at a price. We were made for a purpose in the image of God for greatness. This is an amazing state with all the great ingredients, but for the past 7.5 years under Gretchen Whitmer, we've been led to higher taxes, more crime on the roads, and frankly, the roads we have aren't fixed yet. We're going to work together to make sure that our children can read, to make sure that we put criminals in jail and we hold those accountable who continue to let them back out. And we're going to be making sure that we come together to accomplish the mission of increasing hope and purpose with tested, positive leadership that has actually been tested from the battlefield to business to delivering for you right now. I'm excited for the opportunity to serve you, and I want to thank you for being here tonight.
I want to say this simple thing. Despite the sniping, I want everyone out there to think about this. Freedom is on the ballot in November. Freedom from an overarching government that's shut down your schools, shut down your churches, and shut down your business. Freedom from school districts that think they can indoctrinate your children. And freedom from a state government that thinks that every time you go to work, they get the right to pick your pocket. What's on the ballot in August? Winning that freedom. Because we won't win the freedom in November if we don't have someone who can win. I'm a Marine. I'm the son of immigrants. I'm a homicide prosecutor. I was an attorney general, and I'm the only person who's actually won statewide. One statewide, not a congressional district, statewide twice. I beat the same guy that Mr. James lost to. I know how to get it done because I'm the son of a working class. I'm not the son of the CEO class.
John James said that President Trump is unfit to lead and can't be trusted. Of course, I think he's great, but I've spent my entire life bringing quality and efficiency to organizations. DOD, Navy, and 60,000 companies. It's a specific skill set, and I want to take that skill set and bring quality and efficiency to our state government. In that way, we can eliminate all this craziness that goes on and get rid of that income tax. We also have to reform the property tax so people 65 and older are not in a position where they have to get rid of their home. I have 3 boys, 217, 122. I want them to stay in the state. Now, I know the key, get rid of the income tax. I know I'm an outsider. I'm funding my own campaign. I'm beholden to no one. And because of that, I'm in an ideal position to be able to bring the quality and efficiency to Michigan. And I will be leaning our government with no one leaning on me.
And again, that was Representative John James, former Attorney General Mike Cox, and businessman Perry Johnson. But these aren't the only races going on. Every district in the U.S. House has an election this year. Many of our state legislature districts have elections this year. Here in Michigan, the governor, the attorney general, the secretary of state are all up for grabs. And for those of you that have watched politics over the last 4 and 8 years, you know how important those positions are. Additionally, we've got proposals about a state constitutional convention, and possibly we'll have proposals about citizenship verification to vote and utility and government contracting campaign finance regulations. All of these things you and I have a say in. Now, when we become apathetic to our political process, and I understand the reason why many people are right now, our political process is divisive. It's vitriolic in some cases. Some people bully the other person. But when we become apathetic and when we shirk our responsibility to help shape society and promote the well-being of all by stepping away from that process, we're failing to do all that we can do to promote and build a good and just society. That goes even for some of these obscure local things. Now, I understand that unless you might be a political junkie like myself, that you don't pay attention, possibly, to Lansing politics. I know growing up in North Carolina that we got a lot of state politics on our television because I lived in Raleigh, in the capital. And perhaps for people living outside of Lansing, they don't see that quite as much. I certainly don't here in the Upper Peninsula. Chances are you possibly don't know the name of your state representative or state senator. Now, I don't say this to shame or deride in any way at all. It's just the reality that people turn out for national elections. That's what turns out the vote, and people know that. When there's a popular candidate up the ticket, it helps the candidates down the ticket. People pay attention to national races. That's just the reality of our politics. But I'm urging you to think more closely about some of those local issues that matter. They have consequences too, those local races. Our church even teaches that sometimes things are best done at the lowest level of government. It's called the principle of subsidiarity. We read in St. John Paul II's Contentissimus Annus and the Second Vatican Council's Dignitas Humanae. We read this. The principle of subsidiarity reminds us that larger institutions in society should not overwhelm or interfere with smaller or local institutions. That is, that sometimes the local institutions need to take the charge on what's most important for their community. Yet, it continues, larger institutions have essential responsibilities when more local institutions cannot adequately protect human dignity, meet human needs, and advance the common good. Take, for example, the pro-life issue. Sadly, in our state, we passed Proposal 3 several years ago, codifying a so-called right to abortion in our state constitution. Our state and local government has failed to protect human life. So now it relies on the federal government to correct that. Local institutions do play a vital role in ensuring just and good societies, and it's critical that we pay attention. I'll give you an example. This is a purely local example. I live up here in Marquette County. We are a relatively small county. We're the largest county in the Upper Peninsula by population. We're pretty large by size as well, but obviously nowhere near what you see in Wayne County or Oakland County or Kent County. We have 2 proposals coming up here on our ballot in August that's asking me for a yes or no vote. These are not candidate proposals, but other proposals down the ballot that have to do with millages. They have to do with taxes, with different services that we have. One is a millage to raise more money for veteran services here in the county. The other is a millage to expand public transportation here in the county. Now, you and I can debate on whether or not those are worthwhile causes, and perhaps veteran services, it needs to be run by something federal like the VA. Perhaps it ought to be run by the county. Perhaps it ought to be run by nonprofits like DAV or Tunnels to Towers or something like that. When you take a look at the public transportation issue, you could look at it as a way to provide people an opportunity to work. Or you can see it as a way that perhaps is pulling money away from other resources that might be better spent in the county. These are things that we have to think through and we have to pray about, and that we have to think about what is going to promote the common good in our society. We must pray and use our conscience to vote for what is going to make our society more just and better. It's a society that promotes the common good. That's what we're seeking. I know a lot of people, when they hear those words, the common good, they get concerned about what it means for them. And we do have a definition of the common good. The church has a definition. This is in paragraph 1906 of the Catechism. And it says this: the common good is, quote, the sum total of social conditions which allow people either as individuals or as groups to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. That's what the common good is. It's as simple as that. What is going to benefit our society? What is going to help people reach their fulfillment as human beings? Be it work, be it the ability to raise a family. It isn't necessarily what's going on that's going to benefit you or I. It's what's going to benefit our community, and importantly, what's going to benefit our neighbor. It harkens back to the command that we hear from Jesus about loving our neighbor. The question you or I ought to be asking ourselves as we consider who and what to vote for is this: is this policy, or will this candidate further the common good? And of course, we know that preeminently, that's the word our bishops use, that means the fighting for the right to life, since without that right, we can't guarantee other rights. I encourage you, as we prepare for this primary election here on August 4th, to take a look at what's coming up on your ballot in your community. Know where your polling place is. I want you to pray. I want you to make a plan. I want you to go vote. Let me know what you think about all this by sending me an email. You can send me an email to matthew@mhmediaventures.com. You can also send me a post on X. You can find me. I'm at Radio Handley. We'll have more here on Michigan Morning Saturday, coming up right after this. Support for Ave Maria Radio comes from listeners like you. Thanks to your donations and support, Ave Maria Radio has broadcasted the gospel to Michigan and beyond for the last 30 years. And thanks to you, we're ready for the next 30 more. If you haven't yet made a donation, go to our website, avemariaradio.net/donate. avemariaradio.net/donate. Thank you. Good morning. It's Saturday, July 18th, and this is Michigan Morning Saturday. I'm Matthew Handley. Thank you for joining me. Today's the memorial of St. Camillus de Lellis. St. Camillus was an Italian Catholic priest who founded the Camillians, a religious order dedicated to the care of the sick. He was beatified by Pope Benedict XIV in 1742 and was canonized by him 4 years later in 1746. De Lellis is the patron saint of the sick, hospitals, nurses, and physicians, and his assistance is also invoked against gambling. Now, if you're an astute observer of the universal calendar, you'll note that in the rest of the church, his feast day is July 14th, but here in the U.S., it's moved because of the memorial of St. Tekakwitha. I wanted to share a little bit right now from one of St. Camillus de Lellis' comrades who had written about him and his holy life. His friend said this: to enkindle the enthusiasm of his religious brothers for this all-important virtue, he used to impress upon them the consoling words of Jesus Christ. I was sick and you visited me. He seemed to have these words truly graven on his heart. So often did he say them over and over again. Great and all-embracing was Camillus' charity. Not only the sick and the dying, but every other needy or suffering human being found shelter in his deep and kind concern. Indeed, his heartfelt concern for the poor led him to say often, quote, if there were no poor people in the world, we should have to go below the earth to look for them and rescue them, to show them compassion and do them good. That's from one of the friends of St. Camillus de Lellis. One of his companions wrote that, and we celebrate his feast day today. So, of course, as we continue through our Saturday, we ask for his intercession. St. Camillus de Lellis, pray for us. I'm Matthew Handley. You're listening to Michigan Morning Saturday on Ave Maria Radio and the Ave Maria Radio app. When we come back, we're going to be talking about which county here in Michigan has decided to give taxpayer money to Planned Parenthood and why. Plus, did you know that having a therapist that understands your religious identity can do wonders during your therapy? We'll talk about that as well. Thanks for joining me on the inaugural edition of Michigan Morning Saturday. I'm Matthew Handley. Don't forget, you can stay in touch with me anywhere you go by going to my website, purplecatholic.com, or sending me an email, matthew@mhmediaventures.net. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Michigan Morning Saturday. It's July 18th, the memorial of St. Camillus de Lellis. I'm Matthew Handley. Good morning. While the federal government has sought to end funding for the nation's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood, one county here in Michigan has decided to share $500,000 with the organization. It's right here in Ave Maria Radio's backyard, and it's Washtenaw County. Amber Rosenboom, president of Right to Life of Michigan, said in a statement, quote, this is a shocking affront to the public's trust and a blatant misuse of taxpayer dollars, particularly troubling as Planned Parenthood funnels millions of dollars to support Democratic candidates in the elections. Genevieve Marnin is the legislative director for Right to Life of Michigan. She joined Dr. Marcus Peter on Ave Maria in the afternoon to discuss this troubling story.
So Planned Parenthood had actually gone to the governor and asked for $5 million in taxpayer money. And the governor rightly said that, she's not in charge of allocating, funds, that they should seek, something from the legislature. Well, undeterred, they decided that they would go to one of the more abortion-friendly county commissions in the state, and they went to Washtenaw County Commission, and they pitched that they needed some money. They asked for $500,000, and then at the next meeting, the board unanimously voted to grant them their request. And this is what they call non-structured grant, which means they can spend it on healthcare or operations, and they have until the end of the year to spend it. That's a lot of money to spend in a very short period of time. And I will remind your listeners that this is an election year, and Planned Parenthood is very heavily invested in elections.
Which means if we're talking about financial transparency, Planned Parenthood has unstructured use of these funds to do whatever they will, including political lobbying.
Yes, because Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit, but nonprofits can donate to their own political action campaign, which they have done in the past. And of course, they've committed publicly to spending $47 million in this election cycle, including here in Michigan. So that's where it's just such an egregious misuse of the public dollars.
Tell us about the makeup of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners.
They're all Democrats, every one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're not up for re-election this year because the law changed, so they're now every 4 years instead of every 2 years. So, in case if any of your listeners are in Washtenaw County.
Quite a number of our listeners are in Washtenaw County, and so that's some useful information. Was there any form of oversight to this? Was there any form of accountability to the vote?
None that was really, people could make public comment, but this was not a widely advertised resolution that they had on their docket. And, let me just back up and add just another finer point on why it's such an affront to spend this much money on Planned Parenthood. The last abortion report from the state showed a stunning 38% increase in abortion complications. And of course, that law was repealed, so we won't have any way of knowing how many abortion complications are. And then, just last year in Lenawee County, tragically, a woman died from an abortion. And of course, that was not in the reporting from the state. That had to come to light from a medical examiner's report. So this organization is getting our tax dollars with this background.
And that's only the cases that we know have been reported. Do we have enough reason to believe that there are quite a number of cases where complications occurred that are not reported, especially in Michigan?
Sure. Anecdotally, we know that is the case because we see the ambulances coming and going from abortion clinics, including one right there in Washtenaw County. So, but again, it's not just the fact that this is a danger to women, and we are not made aware of those dangers now that we don't have abortion reporting. And, of course, there's no clinic licensing any longer, no health and safety standards. That law was also repealed. So to hand over money to an organization that has no state oversight, no transparency, and is heavily involved in elections just a couple of months before a midterm election it should be shocking to everyone.
So, based on this conversation, it becomes very clear that this was questionable governance. Were there protocols in place, or was this just standard par for the course kind of governance?
Well, I guess anyone can propose a resolution to any county commission, and then, people can vote on it. I think that is why elections really matter and why people really need to pay attention to these local elections and to what goes on at the local level, because Planned Parenthood said they hope that this becomes the model for other county commissions across the state. So even if you think you're safe because you don't live in Washtenaw County, well, your county commissioners could be approached by Planned Parenthood as well. And that's a problem. And, you started off at the beginning saying they believe that, they've indicated there's more money coming. Mm-hmm. Just so everyone's aware, there is a resolution to put a millage increase on the November ballot, 25% of which will go to, quote, sexual and reproductive health care in the county, which, as we know, Planned Parenthood is the largest provider. So upwards of $1.3 million a year from a millage increase could possibly be going to Planned Parenthood for the next 3 years if this millage gets on the ballot and passes.
Can we also just step into the federal picture as well? Share with us what the funding looks like for Planned Parenthood right now at the federal level.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. There was the One Big Beautiful Bill that was passed last year, and there was a funding moratorium on Medicaid for going toward large abortion providers, including Planned Parenthood. that moratorium on funding for them under Medicaid expired on July 4th, and it has not been renewed. So that funding stream of Medicaid dollars has now been restored to abortion providers, including Planned Parenthood.
And all of this is not only tremendously disheartening. What are some of the things that listeners can do to engage in this conversation?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Number one, you can go, if you want to make sure you're voting for pro-life candidates, including at the local level, Right to Life of Michigan has a ballot generator, rtl.org/vote. You can see who's been endorsed. But more importantly, August 5th is the next Washtenaw County Board meeting, and that's where they will be meeting to vote on whether or not to put the millage increase on the ballot. I can speak for myself, and I'm sure your listeners are also feeling the pinch. Property taxes are very, very high already. So to increase that, that's enough of an argument right there from some listeners. They might want to show up and voice their opinion.
Don't forget you can listen to full episodes of Ave Maria in the afternoon on the Ave Maria Radio app or wherever you listen to podcasts. More Michigan Morning Saturday when we come back. Good morning. Welcome back to Michigan Morning Saturday. I'm Matthew Handley. For those who need therapy, having someone who understands and appreciates your faith can make all the difference. Licensed social worker and member of the Chaldean Catholic Church, Randy Cash-Shamoon joined Vanessa Den Hagarmo on Epiphany this week to discuss his practice working with men, marriages, and addiction.
I worked in medicine for over 20 years, and I would always help these people. I did a lot of EMS, and I worked in the emergency room. I would help people with their problems, and people would come in, and they would always try to talk to me about what they were going through, and I would try to give them advice. And the problem with that was I would help them, and then be like, okay, you can go on your way now, move them, drop them off to the hospital, or admit them to the hospital, send them to the floors, and I would never see them ever again. And I would struggle a lot of the times because I would always wonder, I wonder what happened to that person. I wonder how they're doing, how they're, what happened in their future. And when COVID hit and things were getting a little rocky with the hospital system, I decided, I want to continue doing this. And I decided to go and continue my education and become a therapist. And now I can actually help people and see them through their struggles.
That's wonderful. And you also have an interest particularly with working with men and Chaldean men particularly. Tell us about that, Randy.
Absolutely. I think our Chaldean community, especially the men, we have this persona of, we're strong, we're men. We don't talk about our problems. We don't, have to deal with this. We have to suck it up and just do what we have to do. And that plays a toll on a person, holding on to a lot of this stress and anxiety that we feel as Chaldean men, we are not allowed to show. And I just wanted to bring that to light to help people, especially our Chaldean men, realize that it's okay to talk to somebody about your problems. Everybody has problems, and this is very normal.
Is there value to with men having a kind of a support group too, not just going to therapy, but having each other? Because there's issues, Randy, men deal with that. You can't really, your wife can't relate to, and vice versa. There's girls have, I think, more apt to have a network of sisterhood than maybe men with a brotherhood. Can you kind of speak to that?
Oh, absolutely. I think as Chaldean men, we surround ourselves with people just like us, and unfortunately, people just like us don't want to talk about our problems, and we try to bury that. And hey, let's do men's things. Let's go out and get a couple of drinks and have some cigars and talk about sports, and let's not talk about our problems. I absolutely think that it has a lot of value. I actually have quite a few of my patients that are Chaldean men that I actually see the two friends and have now told me that their friendship, that they both know that they're both going to therapy and are actually able to have these healthy conversations about their struggles and about their lives, and how just seeing me as not the only thing that's helped them, but also realizing that they have this this brotherhood of someone else that is going through the same problems that they're having has helped them so much more.
So, Randy, what are some of the typical issues men face today, whether they're married or not, fathers or not? What are some of the struggles they face, and particularly not men in general, and then Chaldean men or ethnic men, from different cultures?
So, as much as I want to say, different cultures, I feel like even they all fall into the same category as Chaldean men. We all have, in America here, we have, we're a lot more open on our feelings and discussing and beliefs and things like that. But unfortunately, when you come from a different culture, especially being a firstborn generation or coming to America at a very young age, a lot of cultures are very similar in that aspect of, you're not supposed to talk about this stuff, and you're not supposed to, this is taboo, you're supposed to just deal with it. Or and a lot of times is, it's not trying to throw blame, but I love my parents, but it's the parents, because this is what they're pushing onto their kids, and now their kids feel like, well, mom and dad told me this is how I'm supposed to feel, so I'm going to continue feeling this way. So it's almost kind of like a struggle between two different cultures. We have the wherever you're from, other than America, the Middle East, Asia, the Philippines, wherever it may be, a lot of the beliefs are all the same. So now we're like stuck between this rock and a hard place. It's like, I'm an American and I live in America, and this is their beliefs, but I wasn't raised that way. I was raised in a completely different way. And you focus on different aspects, including stress and anxiety and depression, and that has been on the rise. You talked about COVID. That's been on the rise since COVID. Do you deal with teenagers at all, or are you dealing mostly with young adult men? Oh, no, I see ages 5 and older. And okay. I think yes. So I see a lot of that, especially now with our young men, that were very young during COVID and had to deal with that. Absolutely. I think that played a very big factor on their beliefs and their anxiety and their depression. Because of what they had to go through, the not being able to interact with others in class, or, having to do Zoom classes, or unable to go to parks or playgrounds or anything like that. I think that is most definitely our younger generation has retracted from being able to have that interaction with actual other humans. We all know what that isolation did to not just kids, but all of us. There was seniors were suffering. A lot of people were suffering. And I don't want to get into detail, but you probably heard it. We dealt with a tragedy in our own community with a young girl. I'm not going to get her name. I'm not going to give out any information, but took her own life. And it's talk all over the community. And I don't know the details. I don't know the family background. I know nothing. I just want to bring up the fact that what signs can we look for? And I'm not trying to point at this family, but just for helping parents today, this is tragic. My heart broke. I couldn't even work the rest of the day. I'm going to tell you, Randy, when I heard this, I just could not work. I heard it that morning. I did my show and I couldn't do it. I needed other work. I couldn't work with clients. I canceled my afternoon. I was so stressed out about this as a parent. No, absolutely. It hit me pretty hard when I heard about it. I mean, I was at work all day yesterday. When I got out of work, I saw it, and I saw it on social media, and it really affected me. And I'm actually excited. I'm glad that I'm glad that you brought this up, because I think this is a very big focal point on our community, especially the parents of young children, young adults. We tend to think that it happens to everybody else. It's never going to happen to me. The signs to look for, right? We think, my kid's happy, right? And it was big, especially when Robin Williams took his own life. The big. Just because it's usually the happiest people that are the ones that you need to worry the most about. You need to check in on. Checking in on your family members and being able to sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation. Hey, I know you're happy, but is everything okay? Are you good? I want you to understand that I am here. I am present whenever you need me. You are my child. You are my brother. You are my sister. You are my mother, my father. I am here. I am present. I am always here.
Yeah.
To listen to you.
Yeah. You know, Randy, and we know as parents too, you know, teenagers, our brains don't develop till at least 25 years old, right? The human brain. So kids think differently, and one thing goes wrong, and I'm not discounting any child. I'm just saying, having had a teenager myself, right? I have a teenager myself. They view things differently than adults do because they're teenagers, right? Their brain, and they think one thing happens and it's way worse than it is. And this too shall pass. You know, the kid's like this, you think this is horrible and embarrassing or whatever. It's all going to be okay. You know what I mean? It's all going to be okay. You're going to get through this. And sometimes they look at something happening and they live so publicly because of social media. Can you kind of speak to that too? I mean, the trauma for children is exasperated because they can't escape like I did and you did when we were younger because we didn't have social media growing up.
Absolutely. The big thing is, you know, I even do this with I have young kids. My oldest is 10, but I do this with him a lot. And, you know, I always try to, when things go wrong, I remind him and I put myself in a scenario. I will give him a scenario that I experienced myself as a young adult, as a child, on what I had gone through that is similar to what he's going through, and helping him understand, you know, I understand what you're going through. I know it's tough, and I know that you're being pulled in all sorts of directions. You know, social media is telling you this, but remember, you know, it's social media. Those people don't know exactly what you're going through. You may think that they know exactly what you're going through, but you're not. And I may not know exactly what you're going through, but at the same time, right? These are some of the tips that this is how I got through it. I know it's going to be the end of the world, but, you know, I just want you to know that this experience happened to me that is very similar. And these are some of the things on how I got through it, right? You know, my mom was there for me. My dad was there for me. And, you know, I had friends that I was able to turn to. Do I have, you know, if you don't want, I tell my son this all the time. I'm like, you know, sometimes I understand that I'm your dad and you don't want to turn to me and you're embarrassed to talk to me about it. But you know what? You also have, and this is what we do as therapists as a whole, my initial intake when I'm talking to the person for the very first time, I always ask, is there someone in your life other than your family members that you feel 100% comfortable to turn to and actually be able to open up to? No? Okay, maybe do you think that you would be able to find someone that could actually relate to you and be able to speak to you that you trust as much as you trust, you know, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, so on and so forth. It's very, very important to help your kids realize that you're always there for them, but is there someone else that you feel like you can turn to that, you know, is grounded at that moment, right? You're their go-to and they're your go-to, right? And that comfort, right? Okay, this is something serious. I trust this person to actually go and get me help if they can't help me. It's very important to actually find a therapist that does have faith, that can actually relate to you on that level and understand what your faith means to you and what faith in general means to you.
And Epiphany airs weekdays at noon on Ave Maria Radio and the Ave Maria Radio app. St. Paul says in his letter to the Philippians, in everything you do, act without grumbling or arguing. Prove yourselves innocent and straightforward, children of God beyond reproach, in the midst of a twisted and depraved generation, among whom you shine like the stars in the sky. Coming up this week liturgically, tomorrow is the 16th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and on Wednesday, we celebrate the feast of St. Mary Magdalene. I'm Matthew Handley, and I want to say a special thank you for all of you joining me this week on the inaugural edition of Michigan Morning Saturday. I hope you found it just as enjoyable as I have, and Lord willing, I'll talk to you next week on Monday during the news on Morning Offering. Stay tuned to Ave Maria Radio. Colleen Kelly Mast is coming up in just a few minutes with free, friendly advice from a Catholic perspective. This is Michigan Morning Saturday. I'm Matthew Handley. Goodbye.